Sir, how much did you pay for this vehicle?
Excuse me?
Simple question. How does a person like you afford a car like this?
Person like me? What does that mean?
Don't play games. Where'd the money come from? You selling something you shouldn't be?
Are you seriously asking me if I'm a drug dealer?
I'm asking how you paid for an $80,000 car. That's a legitimate question.
Officer Ryan Caldwell had no idea that the man standing in front of his Mercedes wasn't just any driver. He was about to interrogate a licensed architect who spent his mornings designing civic buildings and his afternoons teaching constitutional law as an adjunct professor. The body cam was running, and every word was being recorded. Every assumption was being documented. And what started as a routine traffic stop on a Wednesday afternoon would end with a $340,000 settlement and one officer's permanent exit from law enforcement. Marcus Sullivan wasn't moving. He stood next to his 2023 Mercedes E-Class, hands visible, phone already recording in his shirt pocket. The spring sun was bright overhead. The traffic on Route 9 hummed past them. Everything looked normal. Except nothing about this stop was normal. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Before we get into what happens next, hit that subscribe button because this story takes a turn you won't believe. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Officer Ryan Caldwell had been with the state police for 11 years. He worked the Highway Patrol Division, primarily Route 9, which cut through 3 counties and saw everything from commuter traffic to long-haul trucks. Caldwell had made thousands of stops in his career: speeding violations, broken taillights, expired registrations, routine stuff. But Caldwell had another pattern that nobody had quite connected yet. Over the past 4 years, he had stopped black drivers at a rate 3 times higher than his colleagues working the same stretch of highway. The stops almost always followed the same script: expensive car, black driver, questions about ownership, employment, where they were going, where they'd been. Most of the stops ended with warnings: no tickets, no arrests, just questions and delays, and the subtle message that Caldwell was watching. Marcus Sullivan was 38 years old. He had graduated from Cornell with a degree in architecture, worked for 2 prestigious firms in Boston, before starting his own practice in Hartford 5 years ago. His firm specialized in sustainable public buildings, libraries, community centers, municipal offices. He drove a Mercedes because he could afford it, because he had earned it, because he liked German engineering and had saved for 3 years to buy it outright. No loan, no lease. His name on the title. That Wednesday afternoon, Marcus was driving home from a site meeting with the City Planning Commission. He had just presented designs for a new public library branch. The meeting had gone well. He was thinking about dinner, maybe calling his sister, definitely not thinking about being pulled over. He noticed the state police cruiser behind him at the Route 33 merge. He checked his speed, 63 and a 65. He wasn't speeding. His registration was current. His inspection sticker was valid. His license was clean. The cruiser stayed behind him for 2 miles. Then the lights came on. Marcus signaled, pulled onto the shoulder, put the car in park, and immediately started his phone's voice recorder. He'd been pulled over twice in the past year, both times for reasons that evaporated the moment the officer saw his credentials. He was tired of it. This time, he was documenting everything. Caldwell approached the driver's side window. Marcus already had his license and registration ready, held where Caldwell could see them. But Caldwell didn't ask for them immediately. Instead, he looked at the car, at the Mercedes emblem, at the pristine black paint, at Marcus sitting in the driver's seat. "Sir, how much did you pay for this vehicle?" Marcus blinked. That wasn't how traffic stops started. "Excuse me?" Simple question. How does a person like you afford a car like this? The words hit Marcus like a slap. A person like you. He kept his voice steady. A person like me? What does that mean? Caldwell's expression didn't change. Don't play games. Where'd the money come from? You selling something you shouldn't be? Marcus felt his pulse spike. Are you seriously asking me if I'm a drug dealer? I'm asking how you paid for an $80,000 car. That's a legitimate question. Marcus took a slow breath. He'd been pulled over before. He dealt with assumptions before. But this was different. This officer had skipped straight past any pretense of a traffic violation and gone directly to accusing him of being a criminal. "Can you tell me why I was stopped?" Marcus asked, his voice controlled. "I asked you a question first." And I'm exercising my right not to answer questions that aren't related to the reason for this stop. So I'll ask again, why was I pulled over? Caldwell's jaw tightened. You were weaving between lanes. I wasn't weaving. I've been in the center lane for the last 4 miles. That's not what I observed. Caldwell held out his hand. License and registration. Marcus handed them over. Caldwell studied the license for a long moment. Then he looked at the registration, then back at the Mercedes. So you're Marcus Sullivan, and this is registered to you. That's correct. Where are you coming from? A business meeting downtown. What kind of business? The way Caldwell said it made it sound like he didn't believe any answer Marcus would give. I'm an architect. I was meeting with the city planning commission. Caldwell's eyebrows raised slightly. Architect. He said it like he was tasting the word, testing whether it was believable. And that pays enough for you to own this outright? One. Marcus felt anger rising but kept it contained. I don't see how my financial situation is relevant to a traffic stop. I think it is. I see a lot of people out here driving cars they can't afford, cars that don't match their story. Caldwell leaned closer to the window. Young guys in expensive vehicles with questionable explanations about where the money came from. There it was again, the implication hanging in the air like smoke. Young guys. What pattern are you seeing exactly, officer? It means what it means. So you're saying I don't look like I should be driving this car? That a black man in a Mercedes must be doing something illegal? Caldwell straightened up. I didn't say anything about race. You didn't have to. Quick question for everyone watching. Have you ever been stopped for matching a pattern? Type yes or no below. The conversation was deteriorating. Marcus knew it, Caldwell knew it, but neither was backing down. Caldwell walked back to his cruiser with Marcus's license and registration. He sat there for 12 minutes. 12 minutes that felt like an hour. Marcus watched in his side mirror. Caldwell was on his computer, then on his phone, then just sitting there. When Caldwell came back, his tone had shifted. So, you're an architect? Yes, that's what I said. Working downtown? Meeting with the city planning commission. Also what I said. Cornell graduate, according to your license history. Yes. Caldwell handed back the documents. You design buildings? I do. Must be nice. Fancy degree, fancy car, fancy job. The way Caldwell said fancy dripped with something Marcus couldn't quite name, but absolutely recognized. I worked for it. I'm sure you did. The tone made it clear Caldwell wasn't sure at all. So let me ask you something. How does someone right out of college afford a car like this? I'm not right out of college. I'm 38. I've been working for 16 years. Still, this is, what, 80,000? 90? That's none of your business. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm trying to understand the full picture here. The full picture of what? You stopped me for allegedly weaving, which I didn't do. You verified my license and registration are valid. What else is there to understand? Caldwell shifted his weight. You know how many stolen luxury vehicles we recover on this highway? Are you suggesting my car is stolen? I'm suggesting I need to verify things. You already verified things. You ran my license, you ran my plates. Everything came back clean, or you'd have said something by now. Maybe I want to verify more. Marcus took a breath. Stay calm. Document everything. Don't give him ammunition. What specifically do you want to verify? Pop your trunk. No. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I said no. You don't have probable cause to search my vehicle. I have the authority to ensure this vehicle isn't stolen or involved in criminal activity. You have my registration proving I own it. You have my license proving I'm who I say I am. You have no probable cause for a search. Your refusal is suspicious. My refusal is my Fourth Amendment right. Refusing an unlawful search isn't probable cause. Do you need me to cite the case law, or do you remember it from training? Caldwell's face reddened. You think because you have a degree and a nice car that you can lecture me? I think because I know my rights that I can assert them. Maybe your fancy education didn't teach you about respecting authority. It taught me that authority isn't absolute. It has limits, constitutional limits. Keep talking like that, and this gets a lot more complicated for you. Is that a threat? It's a warning. A warning about what? Exercising my rights? The silence stretched out. Traffic rushed past. The sun beat down on the pavement. Two men staring at each other across a gulf that no amount of credentials or education could bridge in that moment. Caldwell finally spoke. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Pop the trunk. I'm going to tell you one more time. No, if you want to search my car, get a warrant." That attitude right there is protected by the First Amendment, just like my refusal to consent to an unlawful search is protected by the Fourth Amendment. Would you like me to keep going through the Bill of Rights, or are we done here? Type "no way" if you think this officer already crossed the line. Caldwell stared at Marcus for a long moment, then he pulled out his citation book. He started writing, fast, angry strokes of the pen. "What are you citing me for?" Marcus asked. "Failure to maintain lane." "I didn't fail to maintain lane. Your body cam will show that. We'll see what it shows." "Yes, we will. I'm requesting that footage right now for my records." Caldwell ripped the citation from the book and thrust it toward Marcus. "Sign here." Marcus took the paper, read it carefully. The violation listed was failure to maintain lane. Fine, $185. Court date in 3 weeks. "Signing this isn't an admission of guilt," Marcus said. "Just sign it." Marcus signed, took his copy, and sat there. "You're free to go," Caldwell said. "I'm also filing a formal complaint. You do what you need to do." "I will, and I'm requesting the body cam footage, your body camera if you have one, and any notes you made about this stop." Caldwell didn't respond. He just walked back to his cruiser. Marcus sat in his car for a moment before pulling back onto the highway. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from anger, from the absurdity of spending 23 minutes being interrogated about whether he deserved to own his own car. He drove straight to his office, parked, went inside, and started making calls. First call, his lawyer friend from law school who now worked for the ACLU. Second call, the State Police Complaints Division. Third call, his sister, who was also a lawyer and had dealt with similar situations. By the end of that day, Marcus had filed a formal complaint, requested all footage and documentation, and started building his case. The investigation took 10 weeks. Internal Affairs pulled Caldwell's body cam footage. They pulled his stop data for the past 4 years. They interviewed Marcus, they interviewed Caldwell, they reviewed Caldwell's training records and previous complaints. What they found was a pattern that had been hiding in plain sight. In 4 years, Caldwell had made 1,247 traffic stops. Of those, 634 involved black drivers. That was 51% of his stops in an area where black residents made up 14% of the population. Of those 634 stops, 298 involved luxury vehicles: Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Tesla, Jaguar. Of those 298 stops, only 12 resulted in actual citations for the stated reason for the stop. The rest ended with warnings or citations for different violations than the initial reason given. In other words, Caldwell had been using traffic stops as a pretext to question black drivers in expensive cars. He'd pull them over for one thing, then pivot to questions about ownership, employment, income, fishing expeditions disguised as traffic enforcement. The bodycam footage from Marcus's stop was damning. It clearly showed Marcus driving in the center lane, never weaving, never crossing lane markers. The stop had no basis. The audio captured everything. Caldwell's questions about the car's price, his comments about young guys in expensive vehicles, his suggestion that Marcus didn't fit the car, his demand to search the trunk without probable cause, his threat that things would get more complicated. The pattern, combined with the footage, painted a clear picture. Caldwell had been racially profiling drivers for years. Internal Affairs also found something else: 17 previous complaints against Caldwell, 14 from black drivers, all alleging similar behavior, intrusive questions, suggestions they didn't belong in their vehicles, demands for searches without cause. All 17 complaints had been marked as unsubstantiated or unfounded. The department had never looked at the pattern. They treated each complaint as isolated. Nobody had connected the dots. Marcus's complaint was different. Marcus had documentation. He had his phone recording. He had the body cam footage. He had his credentials proving he was exactly who he said he was. He had a paper trail showing the stop was pretextual. Most importantly, Marcus had the expertise to articulate exactly what laws had been violated and why. Do you think patterns like this get ignored on purpose? Let me know what you think. The internal investigation report was 47 pages long. It concluded that Officer Caldwell had engaged in racial profiling, conducted pretextual stops without legal justification, and demonstrated a pattern of behavior inconsistent with department policy and constitutional protections. The recommendation was immediate termination. Caldwell's union fought it. They argued he was being scapegoated, that traffic enforcement requires officer discretion, that he had never been found to violate policy before, that the complaints against him had been unfounded. The hearing took 3 days. The union presented character witnesses, Caldwell's service record, his commendations, his clean disciplinary history. The department presented the data: 634 stops of black drivers in 4 years, 51% of all stops in an area with 14% black population, 298 stops of luxury vehicles with minimal citations, the body cam footage showing no lane violation, the audio showing racially coded language, the 17 previous complaints showing a pattern. The hearing officer deliberated for 6 hours. The decision was final: termination upheld. Caldwell appealed to the State Civil Service Board. They reviewed everything and declined to overturn the termination. The pattern was too clear. The evidence was overwhelming. Caldwell's career in law enforcement was over. Marcus, meanwhile, had filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. His lawyer was one of the best in the state for these cases. The lawsuit alleged Fourth Amendment violations, racial profiling, unlawful detention, and violation of equal protection under the 14th Amendment. The lawsuit named Caldwell individually and the state police department. It included the body cam footage, Marcus's phone recording, the internal investigation findings, and data analysis showing the pattern of discriminatory stops. The state attorney general's office reviewed the case. They called a meeting with Marcus's lawyer. They offered a settlement. The first offer was $125,000 and no admission of wrongdoing. Marcus's lawyer countered with $500,000, policy reforms, mandatory training, and a public acknowledgement of the violations. They negotiated for 2 months. The state was desperate to avoid trial. A jury would watch the body cam footage. They'd see a licensed architect, a Cornell graduate, being interrogated about whether he deserved to own his car. They'd hear the coded language. They'd see the complete lack of probable cause. The verdict would be catastrophic. The settlement was finalized at $340,000. The state police agreed to implement new oversight on traffic stops, mandatory data collection on driver demographics, quarterly review of stop patterns, and annual training on racial profiling and constitutional rights. The settlement also included a public statement acknowledging that Marcus's rights had been violated and that the stop was conducted without proper legal basis. Was $340,000 enough for what Marcus went through? Drop your answer below. The money hit Marcus's account on a Thursday morning 7 months after the traffic stop. He sat in his office looking at the number. It felt surreal. He donated $50,000 to the ACLU. He put $100,000 into a college fund for his nieces. He kept the rest. But the money wasn't the point. The point was the policy changes. The point was that 17 other people who had filed complaints were being contacted and told their complaints were being re-examined. The point was that Caldwell couldn't do this to anyone else. The state police implemented the new data collection system within 3 months. Every stop now required officers to log the driver's race, the reason for the stop, the outcome, and whether a search was conducted. The data was reviewed quarterly by a civilian oversight committee. In the first quarter after implementation, 3 other officers showed similar patterns to Caldwell. All 3 were placed under investigation. 2 received suspensions and mandatory retraining. 1 resigned before the investigation concluded. The training on racial profiling became mandatory for all officers, not just new recruits. It included case studies. One of them was Marcus's stop. Officers watched the body cam footage. They analyzed what Caldwell did wrong. They learned what probable cause actually requires and why patterns based on race aren't legal justification for stops. Officer Ryan Caldwell moved to a different state. He applied to several police departments. None would hire him. His termination record followed him. The reason code was clear. racial profiling and pattern of discriminatory enforcement. He eventually took a job as a security guard at a shopping mall. He told people he'd been forced out of law enforcement because of political correctness and quotas. He never admitted he'd racially profiled drivers for years. He never acknowledged the pattern was real. Marcus went back to his architecture practice. His firm grew. He hired 3 new designers. He won a contract to design a new community center. He continued teaching constitutional law 2 evenings a week. His students knew about the traffic stop. It became a teaching example. Marcus would play the audio recording in class. He'd walk through the constitutional issues. He'd explain what Caldwell did wrong at each step. He'd show students how knowing your rights can make a difference. One of his students asked if he was scared during the stop. Marcus thought about it. Not scared, angry, and tired. Tired of having to prove I deserve to exist in spaces I've earned access to, like A to W. Tired of being questioned about whether I belong in my own car. Another student asked if he thought anything would really change. I don't know, Marcus said, but I know it won't change if nobody pushes back. Rights are like muscles. If you don't exercise them, they atrophy. I exercise mine. That's all I could control. The traffic citation Caldwell had written was dismissed by the court 3 weeks after it was issued. The judge watched the body cam footage, watched Marcus driving perfectly in his lane, dismissed the charge immediately, and noted in the court record that the stop appeared to be pretextual. That notation went into the system. It became part of the paper trail, part of the evidence, part of the pattern. Marcus kept the dismissed citation. He framed it and hung it in his office. Not as a trophy, as a reminder that the system doesn't always work automatically. Sometimes you have to make it work. Sometimes you have to push. Sometimes you have to know your rights and stand on them even when it's uncomfortable. The Mercedes E-Class is still in Marcus's garage. He still drives it to work, to meetings, to site visits. He's been stopped twice since the settlement. Both times, the officers were professional. They explained the reason for the stop clearly. They didn't ask invasive questions. They wrote the ticket or gave the warning and sent him on his way. Marcus doesn't know if those officers were different because of better training or because his lawsuit had sent a message through the department. He doesn't know if the changes will last or if new officers will develop new patterns. What he knows is that for 17 people who filed complaints that were ignored, justice finally arrived. What he knows is that the data is being watched now. What he knows is that one officer's career ended not because of one complaint, but because someone finally connected the pattern. If you think body cameras and data tracking should be mandatory for all police departments, type facts below. The body cam footage from that Wednesday afternoon was never released publicly. It remains in the state police archives, accessible only for training purposes and legal proceedings. But everyone who has watched it comes away with the same reaction. The stop was baseless. The questions were inappropriate. The language was coded but clear. The demand to search the trunk was unlawful. The citation was retaliatory. And it all happened because Officer Caldwell saw a black man driving a Mercedes and decided that needed to be questioned. Marcus gives 3 public talks a year now, usually at law schools, sometimes at community organizations. He tells the story of that traffic stop. He explains the constitutional issues. He emphasizes the importance of staying calm, documenting everything, and knowing your rights. He always ends with the same message. They're counting on you not knowing the law. They're counting on you backing down because a badge is intimidating. They're counting on you accepting that this is just how things are. Don't give them what they're counting on. The audience always asks the same question. Was it worth it? The stress, the time, the energy, the emotional toll of fighting the system. Marcus's answer never changes. I didn't do it because I thought it would be easy or pleasant. I did it because if I didn't, Caldwell would still be out there stopping people who look like me and asking if we deserve our own cars. So yes, it was worth it. The settlement agreement included one other provision that didn't get much attention. The state police had to preserve all of Caldwell's stop data for 10 years. It had to be made available in anonymized form to researchers studying racial profiling in traffic enforcement. That data has already been used in 2 academic studies. Both confirmed what Marcus's case showed. Officers who stop black drivers at disproportionate rates rarely have legal justification for those stops. They're phishing, they're profiling, they're using the badge as cover for bias. The studies cited Marcus's case as a clear example. They recommended the exact reforms that came from his settlement: data collection, pattern review, civilian oversight. Some departments are listening, most aren't, but the research is out there now. The evidence is documented. The pattern is undeniable. One Wednesday afternoon, one traffic stop, one architect who knew his rights and refused to accept that being questioned about owning his own car was normal. That's all it took to expose a pattern that had been operating for years, to end one officer's career, to change department policies, to add to the growing body of evidence that racial profiling in traffic enforcement is real, pervasive, and fixable if departments are willing to do the work. Marcus still drives Route 9, still passes the spot where Caldwell pulled him over. Sometimes he thinks about that afternoon, about how close he came to just signing the ticket and driving away, about how much easier it would have been to avoid the fight. But he didn't. He pushed back, he documented, he filed complaints, he hired lawyers, he forced the system to look at what it had been ignoring. And the system eventually responded, not because it wanted to, because it had to. Thanks for watching this story all the way through. If this opened your eyes or taught you something about your rights, make sure you're subscribed. I share more stories like this that need to be heard. Drop a comment. What's the most important thing you learned from Marcus's experience? And have you ever felt like you had to prove you belong somewhere you had every right to be? Share this video with someone who needs to know their rights, because the more people who understand constitutional protections, the harder it becomes to violate them. Stay informed, stay calm, know your rights. See you in the next one.